A vicious serial killer was on the loose, terrorizing the city. Detective Ray Williams knew there might be only one way to stop him. The community was in turmoil. At 4 minutes to 2 in the morning on 3 October 1987, a man called the Richmond Police Department in Virginia. His wife had been murdered. He had come home to find blood all over, and she was lying in the cupboard. The man's name was Marcellinus Slag, a Dutch-born American resident. Detective Ray Williams, 36, a 10-year veteran of Richmond Department of Public Safety's Homicide Squad, and his partner, Glenn Williams, arrived at the scene. The victim was Susan Elizabeth Helms, a houseman at Virginia Commonwealth University's Medical College. Her hands were tied with an extension cord. There was a red belt around her neck and another belt tied to it for leverage to strangle her. Detective Williams said, "It is the same guy." It was another case, and the police were baffled. Exactly 2 weeks earlier, Williams had arrived at another murder scene. The victim was Debbie Davis, 35. She had been found face down across a bed, her wrists tied with a shoelace. A woolen sock was knotted around her neck. The metal end of a vacuum cleaner had been used to tighten the sock. Many vessels in Davis' eyes had burst. The detective concluded the murderer had taken a long time to kill her. Maybe an hour and a half. He had raped her, and forensic detectives found semen samples on Davis. They also recovered the hair of a black or Polynesian person. Williams had no leads after a week. On 4 October, detectives found a check in Helms' cancelled checks. It was made Debbie Davis. Ray Williams said, "It sent chills up my spine." A week later, the laboratory tests showed that the killer's blood type and secretions were identical on both victims. Ray Williams, however, wanted more. Genetic fingerprinting was a new identification procedure. No such case had used DNA before. Ray Williams believed DNA could come in handy to solve these Richmond murders. He argued for the use of DNA and was joined by the Assistant Commonwealth Attorney Warren Von Schack. On 10 October, the Richmond police sent blood and semen samples to Life Codes Corporation, a lab which was based in New York, for DNA testing. Williams asked for a profile of the killer, which was a standard procedure, and this was to be based on what they knew so far. The FBI, which is an acronym for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, sent a frightening portrait. The killer was most likely white, as was the case in nearly all serial killings. He was above average intelligence. He lived alone or with a dominant female, with a sporty job performance, with a criminal record, and difficulty having a normal sexual relationship with a woman. The serial killer, they argued, wandered at night looking for victims. Then he would withdraw after committing the crime. That was what the FBI came up with. Most suspects in Richmond were lined up, but blood tests eliminated them. The killer was at large. The society was gripped with fear, and the prospect of a serial killer on the loose gripped the community. There was anxiety, and it reached fever pitch. Local hardware shops ran out of window locks, and many residents left the town. News of the stories terrified women who feared staying home alone. This increased Ray Williams' desire to catch the killer. He was now known as the South Side Strangler because of his modus operandi. Ray Williams, it is said, spent 16 hours a day on the case. He also feared for his own family. County police, however, agreed to around-the-clock surveillance on his house. At 3 a.m. on 11 November 1987, a 33-year-old woman in Richmond was awakened in a flat by a masked man wearing gloves and holding a knife. He tied the woman's hands, taunted her with a knife, and repeatedly raped her over a period of 3 hours. However, he made enough noise to wake up a resident in the flat above the victims. On hearing the noise upstairs, the attacker fled and the neighbor called the police. Everything pointed to the South Side Strangler. The victim said her attacker was black. The FBI had assumed otherwise. The woman survived. Another 2 weeks of quiet passed. Ray Williams was worried. He told a fellow detective he's going to keep killing until we get him. He is a cold-blooded animal. On 21 November 1987, Deanne Cho, a 15-year-old schoolgirl, was in a room studying when she was attacked. Her brother said that he heard her typing around 11 p.m. The next morning, her parents went to work. They operated a small grocery shop. Her mother returned at 3 p.m. to find her daughter dead. She was lying face down on a bed, ankles tied together and hands bound behind her with a rope. Another rope was around her neck and her mouth was covered with masking tape. She had been raped and strangled. Between midnight and 2 a.m., the killer was on the prowl. The killer was getting bolder. He was daring the police. He had murdered Deanne Cho while her parents were in the next room. He had the temerity to paint the figure 8 on Cho's thigh. Williams thought he was deliberately provoking the police. An interesting fact was that Cho's flat was close to Cloverleaf Mall, where Debbie Davis worked. There was a connection, he thought. She visited the mall frequently with her friends. The police also found a single hair from a black person under Cho's body. Ray Williams strongly believed the FBI profile was wrong. The killer was not white. Semen samples were sent by investigators to Life Codes for DNA testing. The blood type and secretions of the killer were consistent in all 3 cases. That was their verdict. The killer was getting older by the day.